Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about: did J.K. Rowling give homage to Giles Murphy, the worst witch, or was Harry Potter nothing more but a ripoff of the worst witch? First things first, calm down, stands. Alright, put your wands down. There will be no Avada Kedavra up in here, alright? Now, I happen to be a huge Harry Potter fan, alright? I own all the movies, I've never read the books, I own tons of merch, wands, Funko Pop, shirts, stuff like that. I can like the craft without liking the person that crafted it, alright? I don't like this idiot. I am not for hate. I am not for bigotry. I am not for scumbag, douchebags, gutter trash people like J.K. Rowling. I don't know what her deal is with like the trans community and stuff, but she's literally attacking the community that has done nothing to her. And I don't like people who provoke hateful anger towards a group just for no reason. If you're gonna hate on something, you need to have a good reason to hate on something. So people like Ricky Gervais, or whatever his name is, Dave Chappelle, J.K. Rowling, I don't understand them. Like, there's no point to have like that much disdain in your heart for a community that has literally done nothing to you. You might not understand it, but I don't mean you have to hate on it. And we all know the type of people who hate on stuff they don't understand. All right, that's been going around for centuries in this country and around this world, so I don't get it. Now, if you choose to support her, fine, whatever. I don't care and everything. But let me be me and let me support who I want to be and let me support who I want to just kick to the curb. And she is somebody who's been kicked to the curb because I used to have respect for her, but I don't understand her. And so if you are one of those people who is affected by the trans community, but you support like JK and everything, because I know there is like some people who love Harry Potter and they also love the trans community. This one YouTuber slash actress. Now, I'm not like obsessed or like a love with like the trans community, nothing like that. I just like people. And I like people being happy. And that's all I want. So if you say you're like for the trans community, but you're also still sticking by her, think long and hard about that. Like, think long and hard about that. Think about it. Now, on to this video. Now, for a lot of people like myself, I am also that of a huge Worst Witch fan. However, I've never heard of this property until a few years ago. See, I've been watching Harry Potter ever since I was in college, and I only knew of Harry Potter. I've seen some other witch stuff like Charmed, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, stuff like that. And no matter what, all those properties were different from one another. Then, all of a sudden, I was researching this actress from Called the Midwife, and somebody changed her Wikipedia page and said that she was going to be on The Worst Witch, the 2017 one that's on Netflix. And I'm all like, cool, because she left Called the Midwife. So I'm like, I get to see her in something different. But I had no interest in watching The Worst Witch because when they had a promotional picture, they had like this goofy cartoonish looking picture. I'm just like, I ain't gonna watch no cartoon. But then I decided, okay, whatever, I'll just see what it's about. And to my surprise, it was live action. And to my surprise, it was really cool. And to my surprise, I'm like, hey, they ripped off Harry Potter. Unbeknownst to me, I did some research after that. I'm like, wait, hold up. It's the other way around. And so I'm all like, is it a ripoff or is it an homage or is it just coincidence? Well, I'll tell you this right here. There is no coincidence. In fact, there is a lengthy page on Wikipedia, and I'll link this link below, of tons of like books that came out way before Harry Potter from authors that are a little pissy towards JK because a lot of stuff that happens in Harry Potter is similar to their books. But I ain't got time to go into their books. I only got time to go into The Worst Witch. Now, let me just say this right here, right now. Do I feel like she ripped off The Worst Witch, or is it that of an homage? First, let's get into a couple of examples of ripping off and homages. Homage. Now, I've already reviewed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the King episode, where it's based off a comic. And in that, the creators of Ninja Turtles wanted to give like homage, respect, and honor due to that of Jack Kirby, one of the greatest comic book creators of all time. And in that episode, there's a character named Kirby, and he draws, and his draws come to life, and he creates this alternate reality full of like characters and this and that. It is beyond respectful. It is a true homage. Now, making something similar. Now, let's get these three Japanese properties. Super Sentai, which is Power Rangers in America. I'm not sure what the Japanese pronunciation is of this one show, so I'll give the American one, Ronin Warriors, and then Sailor Moon, which is both known in America and in Japan as Sailor Moon. Now, I believe Super Sentai came out first in the 70s, and Super Sentai is basically a group of like heroes who faces off against the forces of evil, and they wear these colorful outfits, and it's a group of people. Sometimes it's 3, but for the most part it's 5. And then they do add occasional new characters, additional characters and stuff. And each season is a completely different show and complete different team. All right. So it's a group of people around like 5 or so, and they have colorful outfits and they fight the forces of evil, this and that. Ronin Warriors is a group of 5 samurai warrior dudes. Well, just regular dudes who take on samurai armor. They're colorful and they fight the forces of evil, and they get additional members added to their team and everything. Sailor Moon started off as Sailor V, known as Sailor Venus, but then when they started to go more mainstream, they wanted her to be like similar to Super Sentai, so they made the creator create that of a team. So she bumped Sailor V for Sailor Moon and made Sailor V Venus, who's kind of like the second in command, and the 5th one introduced. And it's a group of 5 girls initially with colorful outfits, and they add on new members and they fight the forces of evil. That is the only similarities to that. All of those shows' characters have completely different personalities, completely different looks. It's similar to that of Super Sentai, but they made so much differences to the character's personality and the motivations and this and that it is completely different. Now let's get ripoffs. Craig Ferguson had the Late Late Show on CBS, one of the funniest late shows ever, one of the funniest hosts ever. And there's a French guy over in France named Arthur. And one day, Craig Ferguson got wind of this dude's show. What was so bad about it? The dude ripped him off in every way possible, from the intro to the segments to having puppets on his show, because Greg was known for having puppets and stuff. And Craig actually considered suing that guy, but he had a change of heart. And he said, let bygones be bygones, because his show's about to end soon, so whatever. And he even appeared on the guy's show. And the dude, Arthur, his line behind said, it's an homage. And Craig's like, you ripped me off. You watch these things side by side. If you can find it on YouTube, it is a complete rip off. Now let's get into J.K. Rowling and Jill Murphy. Now, Jill Murphy, may she rest in peace. She had stated a long time ago that she gets tired when people come up to her talking about, the Harry Potter is similar to The Worst Witch and blah, 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 stuff like that. Other authors have said it. Other authors are pissed. People don't like it. Now, is it an homage? Is it a ripoff? Now, one thing you have to understand about The Worst Witch and Harry Potter. They are moons apart in that of their motivation. The Worst Witch is a lighthearted, upbeat, kid-friendly stories about a witch and them going to school, and just like kid love, like lighthearted shenanigans. You know what I'm saying? There is a villain thrown in at one book and everything, but it's not that super major, but it's still lightheartedness. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something designed for that of kids. Harry Potter, on the other hand, is like, it's like night and day. Harry Potter started off kid friendly, but even when it started off kid friendly, it had some darkness to it. Then as the books started getting more and more mature, the books just got super dark. And so, like, it's about a boy destined to destroy this one great evil and this and that. So their tones are completely different. And we've seen this before. The chosen one has to fight the force of evil, stuff like that. So that could be considered similar, right? But here's the thing about this. Both books deal with a protagonist that never knew they had witchcraft abilities. Then they went to an all like boarding type school full of witches, and this like far away secret realm type thing for witches. And they have hijinks here and there in their school. And then in the first book, she fights like a villain. That's about it. Or she stops a villain, I should say. Not really so much fight, but stops the villain in their notorious tracks. And, of course, Harry Potter has that whole Voldemort thing. So that could be considered like an homage, you know what I'm saying? However, then when you start like reading, not necessarily reading more of the books, but then when you start watching the Worst Witch TV series, because there's plenty of those, and then you start reading the Harry Potter books, and then you start watching the movies, something is apparent. It feels more like a ripoff of the characters, but not that of the actual plots and everything. So maybe she showed homage to that of the characters, but there's more than just that that's being like copied and pasted from one book to that of another. See, so even though Harry Potter is leaps and bounds completely different from that of the Worst Witch in terms of storytelling, you cannot deny the fact that the character profiles and like the school profile and that did kind of get ripped off from that of the Worst Witch. It probably started off as an homage at first, but there is blatant like rip-offness when it comes to like the Harry Potter series. It kind of like, okay, because it happens, people hear, they see things, and they're like, I like that, I want to incorporate that in my story. And then they take a little too much, and then they have to realize, oh wait, I'm taking a little too much from this. Now, a lot of people might say, well, maybe it's just a coincidence. Well, okay, let's give you a couple of examples of some witch shows. Charmed, Sabrina Teenage Witch, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Witches of East End, Just Add Magic. I'm trying to think of something else. I can't think of anything right now. All of those witch type shows, well, except for Just Add Magic, there are no witches, but the magic is around. All those magical witchy type shows, they're all completely different from one another. Oh, Salem is another one. They are leaps and bounds different from one another. Sabrina is about a teenage witch who discovers that she is a witch, thought she was mortal. Her father's a warlock, he married a mortal, and she had to go live with her aunts, where she learns witchcraft. Her cat used to try to take over the world when he was a warlock and got turned into a cat. Charmed is about a group of three sisters who did not know that they come from a magical background. Their powers were blind, and then when they became of a certain age, once their grandmother died, their powers got unleashed, and they used the power of three to defeat the forces of evil. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is extremely similar to what I just said before, but it's a darker take where their witchcraft comes from that of like the devil, and they go to like this boarding school full of witches where they learn evil ways of witchcraft, and they sign their name in the blood of that of the book of the devil. Witches of East End, a witch put a spell on like this one woman and her kids, so where her kids when they die, they get reincarnated and stuff. And the mother is tied to this. Her kids have been reincarnated hundreds of thousands of times. And when they are reincarnated, they don't remember their witches. So she spends every like couple of years or whatever, debating if she should even tell them. Sometimes she tells them, sometimes she don't. It doesn't matter because they always end up remembering their witches, and when they do, then that's when like something bad happens, and then they die and they get reincarnated. The mother is so tired, she tried to take her life. Then it also turns out that her father, the kid's grandfather, is really evil and try to take over the world, stuff like that. So different from everything else. Just Add Magic deals with no witches, but it deals with a magic cookbook, and you can do all kind of magical stuff. All of these shows are different from one another. However, when you get to the Worst Witch and you get to Harry Potter, here's where the similarities begin. Wizards of Waverly Place dealt with these three wizards, my bad, the three wizards, two brothers and one sister, and basically they have to compete to see which family member gets to keep their magic in the end. So it's a competition, so they have to be taught in this special layer that's like in a special realm inside their subway shop. And so that's the thing, you can have a family member who has magic as kids, but then once you start to get a little bit older, like in the teenage time, you have to compete and only one of y'all get to keep magic. That's like totally completely different. You have Willow from Buffy, and they had like Covenant of Witches, and they practice like dark magic. Some do, some practice like good magic, and it's just when you see it, it's similar to other like witch stuff, but it is still somewhat different, but it's in the traditional sense of like old school witchcraft and stuff. And the Secret Circle, I don't remember at all. I watched like one episode on the CW. I think it's on the CW app. I just remember a bunch of teen witches in high school, and that's about it. The Craft. It's about like a group of this group of girls that are outcasts in high school, and they're part of this witch covenant, and they start like wreaking revenge on people they can't stand, until there's this one girl who kind of is like, she kind of joins them, kind of don't, and then when she tries to rebel against them, they attack her, and then she has to like defeat them and stuff like that. Totally different. Salem is a very dark, twisted, demonic version of witchcraft. Is darker than that of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. A few years ago, each lady had written a total of 7 books. However, Jill wrote 2 more, making a total of 9 before her death. And JK has written the Fantastic Beasts book, which is kind of like a guide type thing. And she's written other screenplays based off of the Fantastic Beasts, making those into books, as well as a Quidditch like guidebook and stuff like that. The first Worst Witch book came out in 1974. In the 70s, right? And it continued all the way up into Jill Murphy's death in like 2018 or something like that. The first Harry Potter book came out in 1997. But here's the thing. Ripping off something doesn't mean you have to rip off from its source. Like, the Harry Potter books and then the Worst Witch books. But you gotta remember the TV movie and the TV shows that came with the Worst Witch. And when people see things, they're like, I like that. Let me incorporate that in my stuff. It happens all the time. Now, the very first Worst Witch live action anything came in the form of a 1986 TV movie. Then the very first TV show came out in 1998 and lasted to 2001. the very first, or the very first spinoff, Weird Sister College, that came out in 2001. Then they had another spinoff from that same property in that same universe coming out in 2005, lasting in 2007. Then there was a complete reboot in 2017, which you can find on Netflix. This came out decades before the very first Harry Potter live action movie that came out in the early 2000s. And the shows came out like a year after the first Harry Potter book. And also, but it came out like, but the, like I said, the TV movie came out in '86. So JK had plenty of time to like see these shows and craft the rest of her books and her characters and everything. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, are there some similarities. Some similarities are minor, some are somewhat medium, but there are some that are just too huge to not consider that of a ripoff. So let's dive into some of these similarities and everything. Both properties take place at a magical school. The school is within the realm of the real world, but it's kind of like far, far away to where it's kind of like people somehow are not able to find it. It's kind of like a pocket dimension or what you call it. And the worst witch is Miss Cackle's Academy, a boarding school for witches and witches only, no warlocks. And that's where they learn like how to be witches and stuff like that. Their school is in the form of a castle on top of like this mountain, like rocky top. Now you get to Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a school for which Harry Potter has a school called Hogwarts, which is a school for witches and warlocks. And that's where they learn all of their magic. And their school is in the form of a castle. Now, another similarity that's kind of odd is the forest that surrounds that of the school. For some bizarre reason, both forests are forbidden from the students because bad stuff can linger on in there and bad like creature type stuff. That's just kind of odd that both have a forbidden forest. Another similarity is the main protagonist character in The Worst Witch. It is Mildred Hubble. She is a young girl who has no idea she comes from a magical family background. Her mother and father have no magic, but it passed through like the family and it skipped a couple of generations and it hit her. And so she has no earthly idea she is magically inclined until one day she meets Maud flying on a broom, and Maud has to like get to Cackle's Academy. And then so Maud is confused as to, hey, how come you can see me? You must be a witch. And so then, they go to like the school, they sneak her in. This is from the 2017 series. I don't know what the book is like, and I don't know what the other show is like, because it's different. But anyway, so it turns out, oh look, she's a witch and everything. And so she spends her time at Cackle's Academy, going through the trials and tribulations of that of school and shenanigans of being a kid and learning witchcraft and trying to hone the art, but ends up messing up every now and then, and eventually ends up saving the day when there's something bad will happen, like when Agatha, the evil sister, tried to take over the school, or like when a spell goes wrong and she has to like fix it and stuff, or when she turned that one frog back into a human warlock because he was under a spell. Now with Harry Potter is a young boy. He has no earthly idea. He comes from that of a magical background. His parents were witches and warlocks, and he was sent away to go live with his relatives so that he would not know of the magical world, because there is forces of evil that want to kill him because of that of a prophecy. Once he finds out he is a wizard, he goes to Hogwarts, having all kind of like shenanigans with magic and the trials and tribulations of that of school and being a young person, and eventually ends up saving the day whenever the forces of evil try to like harm him or the school or like whatever. That is a huge coincidence. Both protagonists didn't know that they are magically bound because they live their kid lives as like humans, normal humans, and then they're thrust into a world full of magic and everything. That is a huge coincidence. I know a lot of people are saying, well, if she ripped it off, why didn't she just make Harry Potter into like that of a girl? Well, that would have been too much on the nose, don't you think? And stuff. Now, the personalities of Harry and that of Mildred Hubble. Now, there's also another series, a spin-off, a TV show that called The New Worst Witch. And Millie Hubble, no, not Millie, but Hetty Hubble is Millie's cousin. And both Millie and Hetty Hubble's personalities are similar to that of Harry Potter. They're young, they're precocious, they're kind-hearted, they are oblivious to magic, they mess up their spells, they are able to learn the craft eventually. They are very determined and headstrong. With Hetty, she's a little bit more selfish and does things on her own personal gain, and Harry is no exception. There are times where when he gets so obsessed with that of his parents, he takes matters in his own hands, becoming selfish and putting people in harm's way and himself. They are, like I said before, they are truly kind-hearted people who does not wish to harm people and stuff. Harry has a bit more of an edge when he gets to more teen angst because, the Harry Potter series is more darker, and when you talk bad about his parents, he gets very upset. Now, let's get into some supporting characters. Now, the hero of both series. It's funny because multiple times they have almost been expelled. Mildred and Hetty have almost been expelled multiple times at Cackles, and also Harry has almost been expelled multiple times as well. And what's funny is that they always wish they knew more about their father. Now, it's funny, in both series, like really elite families hate the main star of the series. And it's just funny how elite family members hate the main protagonist in both series. Now, this could be just a coincidence, but it's a small, minor like comparison. But it's just funny because how often do you see like a floating head in like a school full of witches and stuff? In the Worst Witch, the TV movie, Maud and I'm not sure who the other girl is because I haven't seen the movie, but it doesn't look, it could be their version of Millie, but it could also be Ethel, where for whatever reason they came up with a potion that makes their body disappear and all you see is a floating head. Now, what's interesting about Harry Potter is that, there's that famous scene where he wears the cloak of invisibility, and most of the time you always just see his floating head and stuff. That's like, it was like a gag in like the first movie and stuff like that. It's just funny that both movies will have that similar trait, because how often do you see a floating head in a show about witches and happen to be going to like a school for witchcraft and all this other stuff? When it comes to Harry Potter, Hetty, and Millie, they all have one best friend who is super, super intelligent, who always buries their nose into books. This best friend is somebody who will help them no matter what. No matter how dangerous the situation is or how much they'll get in trouble at school, that person gets their back. This is in the form of Hermione from Harry Potter, Mona Hallow from The New Worst Witch, and Maud Spellbody from that of The Worst Witch. They are the best friends of the protagonist, and they will help that person no matter what. They are highly intelligent. They can do spells like no other. They can invent stuff to help out. It's pretty uncanny how both of them have a best friend with this very similar personality, and they love to learn. They hate going like on field trips because they rather just spend time studying, taking tests and everything when it comes to that. Maud, not so much, but when it comes to Mona, yes, Mona did not want to go on a field trip. Mona just wanted to bury her head in a book and learn about, like, science and everything else that has to do. That is very much how Hermione is. Now, one strange little Easter egg type thing that's similar is that, okay, the main hero of the series, the first letter of their first name is that of their best friend. So, we have Millie from The Worst Witch and we have Maud, both starting with an M. In the Harry Potter series is Harry and Hermione, both starting with an H. Another similarity is that of the third best friend. The third best friend is one who is not as smart as the other main best friend, but is more of that of a rebel, more of free-spirited person, a little bit of, I guess one could say, a rebel. They like to pull pranks. They like to have fun. They really could care less about schoolwork. They're more of a free-spirited type person. This is the similarities between Ron, Ingrid, and Cressy. All three of these people have the same similar personality traits. Now, Ron, to be fair, in the books, he is a little bit more intelligent than what the movies portray. But the movies portray him more as a goofball, idiot type person. And a bit more of a cowardly person. And the other girls are a bit more cowardly too at times. Especially when they get like really flustered and they get really scared and, the protagonist has to like save the day. It is very uncanny that they have similar personalities. Now, in the new Worst Witch, no, I'm thinking of somebody else. So anyway, but it's still uncanny how they have very similar personality traits. It's also uncanny that it's always a trio. The trio is the main core of the group. They do have other friends, but the shows and the movies and the books, whatever, they all pertain to that of a trio. The main protagonist, the smart one, and the more free-spirited rebel one. They do everything together. They always solve their problems together. It's always them. Now, they do have other friends, like in the shows they created side character friends and stuff like that, and also in that of the movie. I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's pretty ironic that both sets of books have like a trio base and everything. Now, one thing that's quite interesting is that the two best friends that befriends that of the heroes, when they first met each other, they didn't like each other that much. And then they would later become friends thanks to that of the hero of the series. Now, in both series, there is a bully. This bully happens to hate that of our hero to death and tries to go out their way to punish the hero in any way means they can, or try to get them expelled. And the Worst Witch is Ethel Hallow, and she hates Millie Hubble to death. She just hates her because she's so good, sweet, and nice, and all this other stuff. And the new Worst Witch is Belladonna Bindweed, and she hates Hetty Hubble. Then we get on to Harry Potter, and the ultimate bully there is Draco Malfoy, who hates Harry Potter. He tries to befriend him in the first movie, gets snubbed, and hates him for the rest of the series. But then it turns out his dad is really evil, and that's why he does a lot of the bad stuff he does, especially to that of Harry. Now, another thing that is very strange about the bully of the series, they happen to have blonde hair, which is very, very odd. Now, in the TV shows, the original TV show, Ethel has like brown hair because the actress just didn't want to dye it. But then in the new Worst Witch, Belladonna Bindweed, she actually has blonde hair. And then in the 2017 series, she also has blonde hair. And of course, Malfoy has what? Blonde hair. The bully gets turned into an animal. Okay, so in both Harry Potter and the Worst Witch, I've already said, like, there's like, the hero type person, and then there is like the bully. Oddly enough, when they both become adults, they put their differences aside and they have some type of like understanding, you know what I'm saying? What is it? So it's like in Weird Sister College, when Millie became an adult and went to college, so did Ethel. And they still had a little bit of disagreement, but at some point in time, they bonded and the bully stopped bullying. In the last Harry Potter book and movie, we see two adults, Harry and Draco. And they look at each other and they just kind of smile and give each other a nod. They put their differences aside. And I just think that's kind of interesting that like both series would do that the moment they became like adults and stuff. Both schools have the person that's like in the head of the school, they're both older, have gray hair, wear glasses, and they talk in a soft-spoken manner. And the Worst Witch, depending on which series you watch, if it's the original one, I don't think Miss Cackles has glasses, but in the new one, she does have like glasses. And she's a gray-haired woman, and she's very soft-spoken, she's very sweet, she's very kind, she's very understanding. Even when you mess up at school, she gives you chance after chance after chance. And, she's not mean or cruel. Now, in the original series, she was a little bit more crankier, louder, stuff like that. But then the Dumbledores will change as well when they get like new actors. So, But then we get to Dumbledore. And that of Harry Potter. He's an older man. He has gray hair. He has glasses. He is very soft-spoken. He's gentle. He's kind. He's understanding. It's just strange that both people ahead of both schools have very, very, very similar comparisons to one another. Now, it's funny how both series, the main person who's in charge of the school happens to have a evil relative. For the most part, now with the Harry Potter series, it's confusing because J.K. wrote the screenplay for the second one, but then it got changed by the third. I'll get in that a little bit later because it's a little confusing. Okay, and the Worst Witch, Agatha Cackle. She is the evil twin sister of the Miss Cackle lady. And of course, she just wants to take over the school and rule this and that. And she's very, 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 very evil. Now, this is where it gets confusing for the Harry Potter series. For the longest time, Dumbledore did not have any siblings other than that of his brother and his deceased sister. I forget how to pronounce his older brother's name. Aberforth or something like that. Now, this is where it gets confusing. Ezra Miller, he was, they were introduced into the second movie. Now, J.K. Rowling wrote the second movie, and she has no idea how to write a movie. She can write books, but she can't write movies. And that proved big time. And she came up with the character of Credence Barbone. And it turns out he's actually a Dumbledore. A Grueless Dumbledore. Now, originally, he was Dumbledore's, long lost brother, and he's evil, and he wants to kill him and everything. But then in the third movie, because the third movie had to change a lot because of the whole Johnny Depp thing. the Ezra Miller arrests and stuff like that, and also J.K. being transphobic, I can't talk, transphobic, and so then they decided to add another twist again, and instead of Agrulus being the brother of Albus and Aberforth, he's actually the son of Aberforth. So take it however you will, I guess you could say, because it's very, very confusing. And also, she wrote the screenplay for the third Fantastic Beasts movie again. So she kept like throwing all these twists and turns, and it was so confusing. And I don't care. Anyway, they have an evil sibling. Now, one thing about the person, like the headmaster mistress type person, is that they have a dark family secret. Um, Miss Kako has, of course, her sister trying to take over this and that. But, you know, Dumbledore has way more dark secrets than that of just his new, like, nephew thing that they created that JK has no idea what she's doing. And so it's like, you know, whatchamacallit? But he used to, you know, hang out with Grindelwald and they did some bad stuff. Now, what's really interesting and beyond shocking similar is the potions teacher. And the worst witch, it is Miss Heartbroom. Now, her name changes from different TV shows, but I think in the books it's Joy. But Miss Heartbroom, she's a thin, pale-skinned woman with dark blackish hair who wears all black. So she has that goth aesthetic to her. She is the potions teacher. She is very stern, very strict, rude, blunt. And she also despises the main hero of the series, which is Millie. And then when it's in the New Worst Witch, it's Hetty. Now, let's get to Harry Potter. Their potions teacher is extremely similar to that of Miss Heartbroom. A thin, pale-skinned man with dark hair who dresses all in black and despises the main hero in that of Harry Potter. That's just too uncanny. Both are potions masters and very good at it. Both dress similar, both act similar. It is quite a shocker how that is too similar. Also, the potions teacher, they have a very strong, intimate relationship with that of the person in head of the school. Not intimate as romantic, but like it's more like a parent-sibling, like, or parent-child relationship. Miss Heartbroom respects the crap out of Miss Cackle. She holds up in very high esteem, and as she does the school. It's more like a mother-daughter type thing. In Harry Potter, you know, Snape is really good friends with Dumbledore. He looks up to him and says he is the greatest wizard of all time. And he has a lot of respect for that of the school. That's too similar. Now, with the potions master teacher again, it's weird. They befriend that of the bully in school. And the bully is known for, like, of course, bullying the main star of the series. Miss Heartbroom loves Ethel Hollow. And in the New Worst Witch, it was Belladonna Bondweed. And so then in Harry Potter, of course, Snape befriends that of Draco Malfoy. And it's just interesting that the person they befriend as a student, their best student, happens to be the bully of the hero of the main series. keeping with that of the potions master, at some point in time in the series, they take over the school. At one point in time, um, when Miss Cackle is kind of like indisposed, Miss Hardbroom, the like second in command, takes over. And then Snape, when the Dark Lord comes back and takes over Hogwarts, he puts Snape in charge. That's a little bit too much of a coincidence, don't you think? Now, another similarity is the potions teacher. Even though they're moody, mean, and cranky and stuff, they actually have a nice side to them. A secret nice side that nobody knows of. Also, they have somewhat of tragic backstories. They are outcast. They are awkward. Miss Hardbroom, she felt she didn't belong in like the wizarding world, so she would like, leave every now and then. Also with Miss Hardbroom, it was something about her parents. What was it? Oh, she grew up in a very strict household. They never had like birthday cakes and stuff, or they never gave each other birthday presents. Um, Now with Snape, we know that he was bullied by that of James Potter, Harry's father. He fell in love with that of um what is it? Harry's mom. He is the half-blood prince. He created spells that could kill James Potter. That was different from the three deadly curses things that they do. Now, in both series, there is a teacher, and the teacher has a very unique personality. It's too uncanny. So there's a teacher who just happens to be a bit cuckoo crazy nuts in the school, right? And not only is they like cuckoo crazy nuts, but they both wear glasses. They both have frizzy hair. And they both have no business working at the school because they are terrible at their job. In the original Worst Witch, there was Miss Bat, and Miss Bat was beyond crazy. She was always scared of stuff. She would always get frightened and go hide in the broom closet. She had frizzy hair, she had glasses, and I always wondered, why is she working there? Like, she doesn't contribute to nothing. She's really bad at her job. Oh, by the way, may the actress rest in peace. Now we get over to Harry Potter. And God, I forgot this woman's name, the teacher. She teaches divinations. And she is kooky. She has frizzy hair. She has glasses. And she is terrible at her job, at divinations. The only time she had a true prophecy is when she prophesied that the Dark Lord would be defeated by a young boy and everything. That is the only time. It's just too uncanny that they're very similar in that fashion. In both series, there is a main villain that is evil and wants to take over. In the Worst Witch, and also in like the new Worst Witch, it is Agatha Cackle, the sister of Mrs. Cackle from the Mrs. Cackle's Academy. She feels the school should be hers and all this other stuff, and she's like really evil, this and that. And Mildred has to be the one who stops her. And then in the new Worst Witch, it's Hetty who stops her. And of course, in Harry Potter, Lord Voldemort is the main villain of the series. And Harry is destined to like defeat him and stuff. Now, a small like comparison is that the main villain happens to have a right-hand gal. Now, in Miss Cackle's or the Worst Witch series, it makes sense because it's an all-girl school. However, in Harry Potter, one thing that's interesting is that the Dark Lord has a bunch of like minions and stuff, and like Death Eaters. They're normally all men, but there are a few women. One of them is that Beatrix Lestrange, and she is Voldemort's right-hand gal, which is really interesting that he would have a right-hand gal because he's not interested in her romantically. And, out of all the females, she just happens to be that one. There's also seemed to be an odd similarity of two minor slash medium-sized characters that are similar to that of our main protagonist and one of their best friends. Now, in The Worst Witch, Sybil Hallow is the younger sister of Ethel Hallow. She's a year younger. She, unlike Ethel, she's very nice, but she's shy, timid. She cries when she gets upset. However, what's interesting is she's similar to that of Mildred. She's clumsy, she's a little awkward, she's new, she doesn't quite like fit in that well when it comes to like the magic stuff. But over time, she does build some confidence similar to that of Mildred and stuff. She also has a best friend named Clarence. Clarence has frizzy orange hair in the books and in the first series, and she's very intelligent, just like Hermione. Hermione has frizzy hair, and she's very intelligent. Also, she wants to have like a lavish type lifestyle and stuff like that. When Hermione in the books had like buck teeth and crazy hair and did a spell to make herself look better. It's funny how these two minor characters mirror that of the first two main characters. Now, over in Harry Potter, well, actually, I should say that Clarence is kind of like what's her name, Maud. That would be the best example of intelligent stuff. Now let's get into the Harry Potter thing. Now we have the character of Neville. Neville is slightly similar to that of Harry. They both showed up at Hogwarts at the same time. They have a hard time trying to get their lessons. They're a bit timid at times. Neville is different in the fact that he's cowardly, but over time as he gets older, he does get more confident and more brave. One of these reasons why is because when the prophecy was read, they didn't know if it was Harry or Neville. That's two things they have in common, something the movies never really wanted to shine about, but the books did. Now, one of his best friends is that of Seamus. Seamus is Irish with brownish red hair. He's a bit of a rebel. Things are always exploding in his face. He has a similar quality to that of Ron. And so it's weird how they mirror, like they're minor medium characters that mirror that of like the main character in case there were ever to be like a replacement type spinoff type thing. And it's funny how both books have that. That's too similar of a coincidence. Now, one interesting thing that I never knew about until I watched The New Worst Witch is the role of the friend that's a little kooky, high-spirited, and a free-spirited person. In Harry Potter, there is Luna Lovegood. And she is very odd and very strange because of that. Her father just like telling her this and telling her that, and she believes it. She's odd, she's kooky, she is very free-spirited. She dresses unusual at times, and so she makes for a very off-the-wall type character to that of the rest of like the main cast. Now, what I didn't know until just now is that in The New Worst Witch, there is Cressy Winterchild. But her real name is Crescent Moon, but we just call her Cressy. And Cressy is part of the trio in The New Worst Witch. What's interesting about her is that like she is a free spirit. She believes all about like meditation. She dresses sometimes kind of like a hippie or like an outcast. She believes in all this like strange different stuff. And she's also a little kooky in the head and stuff. Now there is a character that is slightly similar in a very odd way. There is Dillis Mustard Seed from the new verse, which that is completely created for the series, and then there's Lavender Brown from the other Harry Potter series. Now, this is what's so interesting about them. Their personalities are totally different. Lavender's more upbeat and everything, and Dillis is more shy and timid. But what's interesting is that she really wants to be part of a group. She really wants to be popular. She really wants to be seen, which is the complete opposite of that Lavender. And she's always joining groups, just like inserts herself in. She inserts herself into Hetty's trio group, and she inserts herself into Belladonna's duo group. Now with Lavender, she's very obsessed with Ron in that one movie, and she starts to date him, and then they start dating in the books and stuff, right? Like they're very obsessed with one another. And that's how Dillis is. Dillis is very obsessed with wanting to join and be part of like something. Now, what's interesting is that Dillis, like I said, is a made-up character, and she's black. Lavender, people are very confused about her race. It's never really specified what race she is in the books, but most people started leaning towards the fact she might be black. In the first couple of Harry Potter movies, there was this one character in the background who was always staring at Ron, very obsessed like, and she was always played by a black girl. She never had no speaking lines whatsoever. Then, when the movie came with Lavender being a main character, all of a sudden, she was now a white character and obsessed with that of Ron. Many people speculate that this black character was originally Lavender Brown, but then they changed her white for the movies when she became that more of a prominent character. Now, what's interesting is that both series have like a person of color, a minority character, that joins the trio or was supposed to join the trio, but nevertheless is friends with them. In in the Worst Witch, the original series, they created two characters. I forget their names. One Indian, one's black, and they are best friends to that of the trio. Now, in the Harry Potter series, there is Dean Thomas. And Dean was originally supposed to be part of the trio as like a four-person group. That's the way JK said she attended it. But for whatever reason, she didn't, and she left Dean out to be with his own group of friends. But then she urged the first director of the movie to include him in more with the trio, but they never did that. So that is kind of interesting, because The Worst Witch did that first. Another thing that's very interesting is when it comes to the trio, there's one of them where their magical tool just happens to be broken and is taped and wrapped up. With that of Millie, her broom is broken and she had to tape it back up. And she later gave that same broom to that of her cousin, Hetty. In the Harry Potter series, Ron so famously broke his wand by mistake in the second chapter or second book and everything, and he had to tape it up, and it caused it to go haywire. Now, this part is just a minor similarity. It's not major. This happens in lots of TV shows. It's like the two main best friends, they're friends and everything, but the best friend is like jealous of the main star of the show. And The Worst Witch, Maud at times becomes jealous of Millie and pretty much every incarnation there is. And then, interestingly enough, Ron becomes jealous of Harry by like the fourth book and everything. In both series, there is a male teacher that just so happens to turn into like an animal at one point and befriends that of the main hero of the series. Now, in The Worst Witch, it's Algenor Rowan-Webb, and he is a wizard who was turned into a frog by Ethel Hallow. And Millie found him as a frog and had like the Grand Wizard like turn him back. Now it differs from TV shows that, when it comes to his character. But yeah, he used to be like a frog and then got turned back into like a wizard. And he befriends that Millie. Now, in Harry Potter, Lucian is that of a teacher showing up in the third book, and he turns into that of a werewolf, and he befriends that of Harry. In both series, there is a evil person who works for the forces of evil, and they just so happens to transform themselves into a teacher. What is it? So of course, in the worst witch, Agatha Crackle is like really evil. She wants to take over the school and this and that, and she pretends to be Miss Cackle at one point. But in the books, she also transforms herself into one of like the teachers. Then in Harry Potter, Barty Crouch Jr., he transforms himself into Mad-Eye Moody. Come on now. Another similarity is that there seems to be at least one teacher at both schools who don't have any like magical powers. And I think that's kind of like really odd and really strange. So, like, okay, in The Worst Witch, the original TV series, Miss Drill, she is the PE teacher. Now, I'm not really quite sure how Miss Drill is in the books, but she's completely different from that of the 2017 series. Now, in the original series, she has no magical powers whatsoever. But then in the 2017, she does. So I'm not really quite sure. Now, in the Harry Potter books, there is a centaur. I forget his name. And he becomes a teacher in the books, not the movies, but the books. And of course, because he's a centaur, he doesn't have any magical witch powers. And for the most part, they're the only ones in both like series in the school that are teachers that don't have any magical powers. Now, one thing that's odd is that there's a groundskeeper on both series, and they're both played by males. And what's fascinating about this is that they have no magical powers whatsoever, but they know all about witchcraft and the witches like society type and stuff like that, or community I should say. And it's bizarre, like in The Worst Witch TV series, there was Frank Blossom, and Frank was like the groundskeeper. He had no magical powers, but he knew all about witch and witchcraft, which is strange because, regular mortal people shouldn't know about that stuff. Then in Harry Potter series, there is Filch. And I forget what they call him, but he's technically kind of a witch, but with no magical powers. So they can see all the witch type stuff, but they can't, like perform any magic. So that's kind of weird. They're both male, they're both older, they're both groundkeepers. They know about the witch's world, but they can't perform any magic. Now, one similarity is how they travel from a faraway distance. They use brooms in both series. Now, brooms and witchcraft go hand in hand, but for older like storytelling, that's the way people back in them olden days, before electricity came around, could like depict like a witch getting from one place to another. And for the most part, in most modern incarnations of like witches, you don't see brooms no more. They just teleport or they drive wherever they have to go. In Sabrina, they used to use brooms, but then they started using vacuums and stuff. So it's very rare to see like a witch using a broom other than like a cartoon series, something like that. So I always thought that was kind of interesting that Harry Potter pulled from that. Also, in like both series, in their first year, they learn how to ride on broomsticks. And that's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, okay, in Harry Potter, how come they didn't learn that in the second year or the third? Why the first? Just like in that of the Worst Witch. In both series, both like series of students have like witches have like familiars, which are animals. Now that's very common in witchcraft type stuff, but in more modern day witchcrafty type stuff, you don't see familiars as much as you used to. But it is kind of funny how like both school of witches and wizards just happen to have like familiars and stuff. The lack of electricity in both series. It's okay. One thing that the Worst Witch has, I'm not really sure about the books, but in like the shows, for the most part, there is no electricity type items. If they have to walk around at night, they have like a candle and everything. And it's very similar to that of Harry Potter. They walk around with candles. There are no light switches. They have to like light their rooms up with candles. Even though they are in the modern era, they just go back to the old-fashioned ways, which is bizarre and kind of weird that Harry Potter would like use that aesthetic and everything that the Worst Witch came up with. Now, in the TV show, every once in a blue moon, all three shows will use electricity. In the first one, they had like a electronic bike thing to learn how to fly. And the new Worst Witch, they had like Mona will come up with some kind of technological thing. And then in the 2017 one, they had tablets where they can communicate with one another. But for the most part, I think the books aren't like that. And it's just the shows wanting to show, hey, we are in the modern era, because with the TV shows, the first two, it was hard to tell what time period they was in. Now in the third one, we know, but still, it's very odd that in both like the Worst Witch and Harry Potter, they use old-fashioned stuff. They use candles to see. They use like old school books. They use like old school like paper. Now, of course, in later Harry Potter movies, they would start using their wands as like flashlights instead of like candles, but still. Now, one thing that's interesting about both the schools is that there is a secret society location hidden in the school. In the original TV show, The Worst Witch, the girls found this hidden compartment and they created a secret society for themselves to like hang out and do stuff. Interesting enough, later on down the road in the Harry Potter books, and it was also shown in the movies, that they found a hidden compartment within the school that was like magical, and they created a secret society of themselves. It's just interesting that both would do the same thing, but for different means and everything. Now, one similarity is their dress attire. Their dress attire consists of undergarment clothes where it's like a nice button-up shirt. Sometimes with the guys, like, well, since Harry Potter has dudes and it has like khaki pants, but also the witches in Harry Potter, they wear like skirts that and then the same thing goes for like the Worst Witch. They'll wear like skirts or some type of like overall type like dress skirt type thing. It's basically like private school wear, like what private school like students wear, like very formal looking stuff. But over that, in Harry Potter, they wear like cloaks, and their cloaks have like hoodies and stuff, and their hood is in like a pointy witch's hat type way. Now in the Worst Witch, they wear cloaks as well, but theirs don't button up in the middle. They're more like capes. But it still has that cloak type feel that Harry Potter has, and also like they actually wear witches' hats with like pointy like tops, which is very similar to like the hoods that Harry Potter them came up with. So the outfits are kind of like a mash up, not exactly the same, but very, very similar. Now, one thing that's interesting is about the school colors. And the original Worst Witch and the new Worst Witch and the 2017, they tend to change every now and then. But for the most part, the colors consist of like red, yellow, green, blue, or either purple. Then we get to the Harry Potter colors. And what are they? Red, yellow, green, and blue. What, they couldn't put in brown or orange? And so it's just funny how like the different like houses have like similar colors. One interesting thing about both of them is that okay, the school is full of tons and tons and tons and tons of like students, right? But whether it's the books or the TV shows or the movies, they only really revolve around about anywhere between 8 to 10 students are ever shown or ever talked about. And that's how like the TV shows are like in the movies. There's only about like 10 or so that's ever get like screen time, even though it's tons and tons of students at school. And of course this is because you have to have your main cast. So that's not really like a huge like similarity, it's more like a minor one. Now it's the same way with the teachers. There are like tons of teachers at the school, but you only see anywhere between 4 and 5 of the teachers ever shown. Now, of course, this could just be like, they want to simplify it, and like, focus on a small group, but still. So that's kind of like a minor similarity. Now, an interesting, huge kind of similarity is another like weird thing is that the person inspecting the school just so happens to be really rude and mean or just downright evil. And it's funny because in the new Worst Witch, somebody was inspecting the school and they was nice. So they don't always have to have that mean person, but it's funny how both of them does. In both series, the main hero student person of the series kidnaps one of the students and transforms into them. In the Worst Witch, for whatever reason, I forgot why, Millie kidnaps this one girl that's a student and she transforms into her. In Harry Potter, in the second one, with Polyjuice Potion, he kidnaps one of Draco's bully friends and then pretends to beat him along with Ron. In both series, there seem to be like these two older students that are either related or best friends, and they're never, ever, ever apart. They're always with each other, and they help out the trio of heroes a lot. And it's just like uncanny. So that was just a couple of like, similarities that I found that was kind of odd of that the Worst Witch and that of Harry Potter. It's very peculiar how like some of those personality traits really translated on over to the Harry Potter series. It could be a coincidence, it might be an homage, it could be a blatant ripoff. Because most of the time when you see something on TV or you read something, you're like, hey, I like this, I want to bring it over into my thing. But when you start having things that are too hard on the nose, then you kind of get suspicious and stuff. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.